Before I do that, I'd like to welcome you to Colorado College. On behalf of the college, I hope that this time is one of hospitality for you. We hope that it is the hospitality, and part of that hospitality is being a place where we engage respectfully and meaningfully around issues related to the service and to hearing those experiences deeply. So as we gather, I'd like you to hear, or maybe hear these words. May this space be a place of deep sharing. May all words be spoken with integrity. May all words be heard with compassion. May the experiences brought here be held without judgment. And may the grace of this time help heal old wounds in our lives and in the life of this community. And together with the sacred, may we bless this space. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Good morning, good morning, good morning. I'm Sarah Hautzinger, and I teach in the anthropology department here, and I'm also part of our partnership for civic engagement, which has to do with working in the community, with the community. And I'm very pleased to see folks here this morning on an early Saturday. And we might have folks wandering in, but really glad to have those of you who are already here. I'm going to remind you again, eat lots. And this is all very free-flowing. We're sitting up here to kind of keep it informal. So please feel like you can get up and get some more coffee as you like. Our program this morning, just briefly, is this first panel is what I call sort of the supporting cast members, military spouses, community organizations, activists, researchers like myself. And then we'll have, and this will go until 10:30. At 10:45, Dr. Jean Scanlon, my partner in crime and co-author, will be moderating a second panel on different reintegration therapies and modalities, that kind of thing. And that'll go to 12:15. And then at 1:30, Laura Benamatz, the painter, will paint us a picture about her series of battle portraits. And then some of the other local artists that work with art therapy, different kinds of ways of employing art to speak to military issues in our community will speak. I want to thank our sponsors, the Partnership for Civic Engagement, the Roosevelt Institute, the students, yay, Jay, and yay, you guys too, and the Cultural Attractions Fund, all at Colorado College, and then also the Colorado Injured Military Support Group is a sponsor of the event. Just by way of getting us going this morning, I wanted to say a word about how this event, in my mind, is already a tremendous success because of the kinds of conversations that it's generated. And in my mind, one of the things that I would least like to see around how we engage being at war for 10 years in this country is silence and a lack of engagement. I would rather see people arguing than being disengaged. And so that's been already quite gratifying. It does raise lots of questions about how people do authentically engage. At Colorado College, not surprisingly, we have a lot of students and others who might say, well, I went to 3 protests against invading Iraq, and we did anyway, so I'm done. And one of the places I'm coming from more strongly than ever after 3 years of being very immersed in researching these kinds of issues is that that's not good enough, especially if you're concerned about what it means to be a nation at war. None of us get this, and it's about all of us. So, and obviously preaching to the choir for the people that are here, but I think that that's really important to talk about and to really ask yourself and ask your fellow citizens, your neighbors, how do you authentically engage to support our military service members, even if for you, supporting means being outside protesting and saying bring them home or whatever that means. Some people have found it surprising to have a 3-day series commemorating Veterans Day at Colorado college. And I've even been asked by some of my dear friends in the peace community, is Colorado College becoming a military and cheerleading section? And I think that those have actually been very constructive conversations. But what I do know is that our nation's veterans and those living closest to them in our community know a lot more about war than I ever want to, and a lot more about service than most of us ever will either. And we owe it to them to listen and learn. Jean and my work through the Soldier Family Wellness Project over the last 3 years has really, we started really looking at combat stress issues and how they play out in the community when a military spouse came to us that was working down in Fort Carson and found that a lot of the wives were going to psychiatrists and psychologists in the community and asking for drug prescriptions that were really for their husbands. So we started researching a bit about what the obstacles to soldiers seeking family. And then that's really broadened to a place where we're really looking at military community, cross-cultural relations, as it were, as anthropologists. One of my passions in coming to this issue, because my earliest reading was really about militarization as a process, and as a feminist, one of my passions is to, yes, honor the service members, and that's really what yesterday was so dedicated to, but today we shift to shining the spotlight on some of what I call the supporting cast members, the people who are told, you're not the star of this show, but are very much in the trenches, to use a military metaphor, very much living some of the trauma and the challenges around this. So that's really what this panel today is about, is to hear from some of the people that are in those circles doing different kinds of work. I want to really emphasize that this is far from a representative cross-section. Gosh, in Colorado Springs, you can imagine the number of people that you would invite to sit on a panel like this range in the dozens. And that's partially why I think Colorado Springs is less disengaged than a lot of other communities. So we invited people that we thought would be interested, that we could, for anyone sitting here, that they could take work, and that's important to acknowledge. All right. In these words, I think we're in really new territory that we've never been in before we went to the Vietnam War, and for at least 3 reasons. One, being an all-volunteer force and a professionalized force, so that people who are struggling can't necessarily be cast as victims because people say, no, you're a volunteer, you signed up, right? So that's part of it. It's part of why we had a really angry dad here after we showed the film on Friday night who said, I wanted to see who shows up to talk about this in a nation where we think it's okay to let 0.5% fight these wars and everyone else goes to the mall, is the way he put it. Certainly the multiple deployments, which are part, I think, of all volunteer force. Having people do 3 year-long tours or 6, 7, 8, 9 of your special forces tours, totally new territory in terms of what it means for the psychology of it, what it means for the family dynamics, etc. And thirdly, I would say that all wars are unique. There's that saying, we always are fighting the last war. But we also talk about the fog of war. We don't necessarily know what's going on in a lot of different senses. And I would argue that these wars are especially new and foggy in that way. They're open-ended. There's not an enemy nation state. So all of those things just present new challenges and new terrain that these folks can maybe address. I've really asked people to speak more from personal experience. That's why we titled it Reflections from the Homefront. Because I think there's a lot more information available out there.